It was Christmas Eve night, the kind of night that always felt special in our house when I was growing up. Every year my family hosted Christmas Eve dinner. My grandparents, uncles, aunts, and cousins would all come over, filling the house with noise and laughter. I must have been around 12 that year. My mom was in the kitchen preparing duck, which had always been our Christmas Eve tradition. For once I was actually helping her cook and get things ready. Normally my dad would help, but that year he had a terrible cold and was trying to stay away from the food and from everyone else as much as possible so he would not get anyone sick. Family members began arriving one after another. The first to show up was my Uncle Joe with my cousins Chris and Valerie. They were closest to me in age, so we had always gotten along better than with the rest of the cousins. The moment they walked in, my attention shifted away from helping my mom. Chris had brought a video game that I had been dying to try out. It was Driver 2 for my PlayStation. The second he showed it to me, we ran upstairs to my room. Valerie followed along just to watch while we started the game. We had barely been playing for a few minutes when my mom shouted my name up the stairs. She sounded annoyed, which instantly ruined the moment. I hoped she might just let me keep playing, but she was already stressed out from cooking a big dinner for the whole family. So we had no choice but to pause the game and go back downstairs. We left the game sitting on pause, and all three of us headed down. By that time, most of the family had arrived. I was trying to greet everyone while also helping finish setting the table and carrying things around the kitchen. Within about 30 minutes, everyone was there and dinner was almost ready. Plates were laid out, and several people had already taken their seats at the table, including me. Then suddenly, my mom yelled from the kitchen, "Ah, shit." She called my name and told me to run down to the basement to grab the stuffing because she had forgotten to prepare it. Our house did not have a proper pantry, so she kept a lot of food stored behind the bar in the basement. I went downstairs to get it. I walked behind the bar and started searching through the shelves for the stuffing mix. While I was looking, something caught my eye in the corner of the basement near the two sofas. A blanket was draped over something that looked like a person. My first thought was that one of my cousins was hiding under there, waiting to jump out and scare me. As I stepped closer, I could see the shape more clearly. There was definitely a body under that blanket. I could even make out where the head was. I stood there quietly, expecting whoever it was to suddenly jump up. I started wondering how they would know when to scare me if they could not see me through the blanket. Then suddenly, the basement lights shut off, and I heard the door slam shut upstairs. I immediately shouted, "Screw you," because I assumed it was Chris or Valerie messing with me. I figured they were trying to pull some kind of prank. I was sure it was one of them hiding under the blanket while the other turned off the lights. But I decided the joke was about to be on them. I slowly walked across the carpet toward the corner where the blanket covered the person. I reached down, grabbed the blanket, and ripped it away while yelling loudly to scare whoever was underneath. Instead of hearing one of my cousins scream or laugh, there was complete silence. Then suddenly, a very strong hand grabbed me. Whoever it was immediately went for my neck once they felt where it was in the darkness. For a moment, I actually thought it was Chris messing around, and I started yelling at him to stop. But the grip was way too strong. It felt like the hand of a grown man. I tried to scream, but barely any air came out. I started screaming as loudly as I could with whatever breath I had left. Just then, the basement door burst open, and the lights turned back on. Standing there was an old man who looked dirty and disheveled. The second the lights came on, he released me and ran toward the other basement door that led outside into the backyard instead of the one that led upstairs. Within seconds, half my family came rushing down the stairs. I was crying uncontrollably and yelling that he ran that way while pointing toward the open backyard door. Two of my uncles immediately ran outside to try to catch him. Meanwhile, my mom and aunts surrounded me and tried to calm me down while I continued crying. My entire body was shaking. I felt sick and completely terrified. My mom called the police right away. My uncles searched the neighborhood for almost 20 minutes, going from yard to yard trying to find the man. It did not make much sense, because he did not seem like someone who could run very far that quickly. That made us think he was probably hiding somewhere nearby in our backyard, or maybe in a neighbor's yard. When the police arrived, the officer said it sounded like a homeless squatter who had been trying to find somewhere warm to hide from the cold. He said they had received several calls like that during that month. Hearing that explanation did not make me feel any better, especially after that man had his hand around my neck. It turned out my cousins had been trying to prank me by turning off the lights and slamming the basement door. That part really had been their idea. But the man hiding under the blanket was definitely not part of their plan. That Christmas Eve, my family learned a lesson the hard way. Always make sure every door and every entrance to the house is locked at all times. It was Christmas Eve night. I was still a little kid at the time. My dad had recently started seeing a woman named Sydney. My mom had died when I was very young, so growing up, I did not really know what it felt like to have a mother figure around the house. When my dad began dating Sydney, she would sometimes stay at our house on the weekends. My siblings and I actually liked when she came over. Sydney always seemed like a nice enough woman. Looking back, maybe I was a little biased because I just liked the idea of having a woman around the house again. That particular weekend, she was staying with us for Christmas. From what I remember, she did not really have much family of her own to spend the holiday with. That evening, we all sat together and watched the movie Elf. It was my brother, my sister, my dad, and Sydney. After the movie ended, my dad and Sydney went upstairs to go to bed. My brother and I stayed up a little longer to watch the Polar Express. When that movie ended, Sydney came downstairs and told us it was probably time for us to get some sleep too. By that point in my childhood, I had already started questioning whether Santa Claus was actually real. I had a strong suspicion that my dad was the one putting the presents under the tree every year. I went to my room, but instead of going to sleep, I played video games for a while. Around midnight, I decided to sneak out of my room to check if the presents had been placed under the tree yet. Our house had a slightly unusual layout. My bedroom was the only bedroom on the den level. All the other bedrooms were upstairs. The living room and the Christmas tree were on the main level, which was about half a flight of stairs above my room. I quietly opened my door and crept up the stairs, trying not to make any noise. When I peeked into the living room, the only light came from the Christmas tree. I could see that there were already presents underneath it, but I also saw Sydney sitting there. At first, I assumed she was the one placing the gifts under the tree. I remember thinking that this confirmed my theory that Santa was not real after all. But then I realized she was not putting presents down. She was picking them up and shaking them, almost like she was trying to guess what was inside each box. Then she grabbed one of the gifts that was in a gift bag and started digging through it. She pulled out what looked like makeup. From the packaging, it seemed like something that had been bought for my sister. Sydney looked it over carefully for a moment before placing it back inside the bag. I did not really understand what she was doing, but I stayed there watching quietly. After a minute, she stood up and walked into the kitchen. My dad always kept his wallet on a ledge in the kitchen, and I watched as she walked straight over to it. What happened next completely shocked me. She opened my dad's wallet, pulled out a few bills, and slipped them into the pocket of her pajama pants. I stayed frozen on the stairs, just watching. After that, she opened the cabinet above the ledge where we kept medicine. She took out one of my dad's prescription bottles and stared at it for a moment. She opened the bottle, sniffed it, and then slowly turned her head to look around the room. Her eyes landed directly on me. It felt like she had been about to do something really wrong and had just turned to make sure nobody was watching. When she saw me standing there, her eyes widened immediately. She quickly put the bottle back in the cabinet. I panicked and hurried back down the stairs as quietly as I could. I rushed into my room and jumped into bed, pretending that I had been asleep the whole time. Only a few seconds later, I heard my bedroom door creak open and then close again. I did not look up. I had no idea if she had stepped inside my room or if she was just standing at the doorway. A few minutes passed and everything stayed silent. Eventually, I worked up the courage to check if she was gone. When I lifted my head, I nearly screamed. Sydney was standing right beside my bed. Because the lights were off, I could only see the outline of her body. The darkness somehow made the whole situation feel even more unsettling. She looked down at me and quietly said that she had seen me watching her earlier. In a tense whisper, she told me that she had not been doing anything wrong. She said she was only checking to make sure my dad had been taking his medication. I just replied, "Okay." Then she said Merry Christmas and walked out of the room. The next morning we all gathered in the living room to open our presents. After a while, my dad suddenly came in looking angry. He asked if any of us had taken $60 out of his wallet. My eyes immediately went to Sydney. She glanced right back at me in a way that made it clear she knew I had seen what she did. At that moment, I stayed quiet. Later that day, my dad was still upset and kept asking my brother, sister, and me if one of us had taken the money. Eventually, I told him what I had seen the night before. At first, he did not believe me. But when I mentioned that she had also been looking through his prescription medication, he started to take what I said more seriously. I think he realized that was a strange detail for a kid to make up. That night, the two of them had a very loud argument. Surprisingly, though, my dad did not ask Sydney to leave right away. She denied taking the money, and I think my dad simply did not know how to handle the situation. When it was time for bed, I locked my bedroom door. My dad had always told us never to lock our doors, but that night I felt too uneasy to sleep without doing it. I am really glad I did. Around the same time as the night before, I heard someone trying the doorknob to my room. It rattled a few times, as if someone was trying to open it. I am almost certain it was Sydney. The next day, I asked my dad if he had tried to open my door during the night, and he said he had not. After she finally left our house, I begged my dad not to let her come back again. I told him she scared me, and that I thought she might have been planning to do something to his medication. Thankfully, my dad listened to me. Not long after that, he stopped seeing Sydney completely. Even now, years later, I still sometimes wonder what she was planning to do with that bottle of medication if she had not noticed me watching her. It was Christmas night in 2021, and it happened to fall on a Saturday. I had driven up to Vermont to spend the holiday weekend with my family. The plan was to stay from Saturday, which was Christmas Day, until Monday. On Christmas Eve, I had gone to my girlfriend's family gathering instead. Christmas Day itself was reserved for my own family. My girlfriend did not come along with me for the trip. Our Christmas gathering was fairly small anyway, since our relatives are scattered across the East Coast. That year, it was just my parents, my older brother, his girlfriend, my aunt and uncle, and me. My parents' house is large enough that everyone could stay comfortably for the night. After dinner, we followed our usual tradition of sitting down together to watch a movie with the fireplace going. That year, we watched Bad Santa, which is one of my dad's favorite Christmas movies. When the movie finished, we all had pumpkin pie with ice cream. After dessert, we stayed up a little longer playing cards together around the table. Eventually, around 11, people started heading off to wherever they were sleeping. My brother and his girlfriend took one of the 2 spare bedrooms. My aunt and uncle used the other one. I ended up on the pull-out couch in the living room, which I actually liked. Sleeping near the fireplace and the Christmas tree made the room feel warm and peaceful. Everything felt incredibly cozy. I left the television on while I slowly started drifting off. When I felt sleep coming, I turned off both the TV and the lights on the Christmas tree. The fire in the fireplace was fading out, giving off its final bits of warmth. The room slowly sank into near total darkness. Not long after that, I slipped into a dream. In the dream, it was Christmas again, and my whole family was together. The strange part was that we were not at my parents' house anymore. Instead, we were gathered at my uncle's place. More relatives were there too, like my cousin Jackie and my Aunt Melissa. Nothing unusual was happening in the dream. We were all sitting around the dinner table talking like normal. Then suddenly, everyone stopped speaking at the same time. One by one, they all turned their heads and stared directly at me. My Aunt Melissa looked at me with a serious expression and said, "There is someone in the house. Wake up." Right after she said that, I jolted awake. My heart was already pounding hard in my chest for some reason. The way the dream had ended really unsettled me. I pushed myself up slightly and stared around the dark living room, suddenly feeling uneasy. The extremely high ceiling in that room made the darkness feel even larger and more open around me. Then I heard a quiet creak from the floor near where the kitchen meets the living room. I turned my head toward the sound. The fire had completely died out by that point. There was no light left in the room. Still, I thought I could make out the shape of someone standing where the kitchen doorway begins. I called out quietly, "Is someone there?" expecting one of my family members to answer me. No one did. The dark shape that looked like a person was still standing there, though. I sat up a little further, squinting toward the doorway to see better. Then the shape started moving. It was definitely a person. "Who is that?" I said again, this time louder. Instead of answering, the figure quickly moved toward the back door. A moment later, I heard the door open and then shut again. I immediately started yelling for everyone to wake up. Within seconds, my family members rushed out from their rooms into the living room. All of them. That meant the person I had just seen was definitely not anyone in my family. My dad, my brother, my uncle, and I quickly threw on shoes and coats before running outside into the freezing air to look around. Not long after stepping into the backyard, we spotted a trail of footprints in the snow, heading straight toward the woods behind the house. It was about 2 a.m, and the houses in that area are spread pretty far apart. None of us were exactly excited about following the footsteps of some stranger into the dark woods. Instead, we decided to call the police. While we waited for them to arrive, my brother and I stood in the backyard watching the tree line. The woods looked completely black and silent. Somewhere in there was a person who had just been inside the house, and there was a good chance they could see us standing there, even though we could not see them. Meanwhile, the rest of the family searched the house to see if anything had been taken. Surprisingly, nothing seemed to be missing. Then again, it was not like my parents kept money or jewelry sitting out on the first floor where someone could easily grab it. When the police arrived, they followed the trail of footprints into the woods as far as they could. Eventually, the tracks became too faint and scattered to follow any further. They told us they had not received any other reports of break-ins that night, at least none so far. The next day I checked the news, expecting to maybe see something about a burglary nearby. Nothing showed up. It may have just been a random situation where someone picked my parents' house hoping to find expensive Christmas presents or other valuables. One thing I know for sure is that I did not sleep very well the next night on that living room couch. Even now I still remember the sight of that silent figure standing in the dark doorway of the kitchen, and the image has never really left me.